CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is Global Business.
Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Jamie Owen.
And I'm Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. China's president calls for BRICS countries to oppose international sanctions and abandon Cold War mentality as the Five-Nation Summit begins.
Our other headlines: European lawmakers have voted to formally accept Ukraine and Moldova as candidates to join the European Union, but there are still many hurdles ahead.
Elon Musk says Tesla's new electric car factories in the United States and Germany are losing billions of dollars.
And forget about those bear markets and bull markets. All the smart money's on cats and dogs. Always big business around the world. The 5 countries that make up BRICS have outlined how they'll work together in the future as part of the Beijing Declaration at this year's summit.
China hosted the meeting and President Xi Jinping delivered the opening ceremony speech. He called on BRICS countries to make a positive, stable and constructive contribution. Our correspondent Tang Bo reports.
President Xi Jinping pointed out in his keynote speech that this meeting is at a critical juncture of where human society is headed. As important emerging markets and major developing countries, the BRICS nations must be brave in their responsibilities and actions and inject positive and constructive forces into the world. And to further elaborate, he said that first, we must speak out for fairness and justice and promote the international community to practice genuine multilateralism and maintain the international system with the UN at its core and abandon the Cold War mentality and group confrontation. And second, he said that we must strengthen our belief in defeating the epidemic and in an attitude of being responsible to the people and life and build a solid barrier for epidemic prevention and control and strengthen international anti-epidemic cooperation. And third, he said that we must gather the synergy of economic recovery and strengthen macro policy coordination so as to ensure the safety and smoothness of industrial and supply chains and build an open world economy. And fourth, he added that we must promote sustainable development, adhere to the people-centered development philosophy, and increase investment in poverty reduction, food, education, health, and other fields, and promote the implementation of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to achieve a better global development. And that will be the focus of the high-level dialogue on global development to be held on Friday, where President Xi Jinping will also host the event.
Our correspondent Tang Bo reporting from Beijing. Well, President Putin says Russia is in the process of redirecting its trade and oil exports towards the BRICS group of countries in the wake of Western sanctions following his invasion of Ukraine.
The current crisis in the global economy, which is due to the ill-conceived and selfish actions of some countries who use financial mechanisms to blame others the world over for their own macroeconomic policy faults. It can be solved only through honest and mutually beneficial cooperation.
But is Russia's plan to pivot to BRICS economies workable? Well, let's talk to Rajneesh Narula, who's Professor of International Business Regulation from the University of Reading. He joins us from Maastricht in the Netherlands. Welcome to the programme. So Russia wants to reroute its exports to these BRICS countries. What do you make of that idea? Do you think it'll work? Do you think the countries will want to switch their imports to what Russia's providing?
Well, Robin, I think this is, it's a very diverse group of countries. There's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and these are very different countries, very different geopolitical ambitions, very different sets of objectives. And I think it's disingenuous to suggest that they actually they have a similar interests. They have interests that overlap up to a certain point. So we have, for instance, in the case of India, India has a long history of trading with Russia, and in their case, there's a certain benefit for India, and there's a large profit margin in redirecting exports. So there is certainly something there, but it's an economic goal, which is very different from the objective of China in this relationship, because China has geopolitical ambitions which are much more important than the economic issues in this trade. For China, it's a very small amount of money. They have bigger fish to fry. And I think, and of course, India and China do not ever see eye to eye. So there will be a lot of tension, and both have different objectives.
But it will be a big shake-up of existing global trade patterns, won't it?
Up to a point. I mean, it certainly is. The case of, as I said, for China, this isn't as big a deal as it will be for India. But Robin, you have to keep in mind that these countries have also to make sure they don't upset the balance between the United States, the kind of the new dichotomy between China and the United States. So you will see them being careful. Brazil, for instance, will want to sit on the fence in this matter, because they're just in South America, which is very closely monitored by the U.S. And South Africa, of course, has a different set of objectives. So it sounds like a lot that a lot can happen, but in my estimation, I don't think we will actually see it making a change to the structure of the world economy.
Russia becoming more economically isolated after its invasion of Ukraine. How important is the BRICS group for Russia and the future of its economy?
I think it's an important lifeline, at least in the short run. So moving petroleum out of, 35% of Russia's oil goes to a very large share, I forget exactly how much, goes to the EU. And that remains their most important customer. The second most important customer will probably become countries like India, which will then be able to acquire gasoline at a discount price. So this is going to be, and then resell it for a very large profit. We're going to see a lot of that happening, and it's going to benefit countries like India in a strong way, as well as China, and less so a number of other countries.
Professor Rajneesh Narula from the University of Reading, thanks very much indeed for talking to us today.
Pleasure.
European lawmakers have voted to formally accept Ukraine and Moldova as candidates to join the European Union.
MEPs clapped the result of the vote, which is a symbolic step likely to anger Russia. Kiev applied to join the EU days after Russia's invasion. However, a number of Western Balkan countries have been candidate countries for years, which raises the question of whether Ukraine will get preferential treatment. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Ira Spitzer in Brussels. Ira, a strong show of support for the candidacy of Ukraine and Moldova by the Parliament. Now the leaders, of course, must reach agreement on the rather tricky small print.
Well, the 27 leaders of the European Union member states are all meeting right now at the European Council for their leaders' summit, and the strong expectation is that they are going to rubber stamp Ukraine's candidacy to eventually become a full-fledged member of the European Union. Now, we've heard strong signals of support ahead of this meeting, for example, from the Irish and Lithuanian leaders. The leaders of France, Italy, and Germany visited Kyiv last week to personally express their support for Ukraine's bid and meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president. So if this happens, as we expect it to do, it's certainly a historic day for Ukraine, a historic day for Brussels, and this is not business as usual. Ukraine's candidacy was pushed forward because of the Russian invasion of the country at the end of February. This response by the European Union is definitely going to be received positively in Ukraine, because this is a country where millions of people have long wanted closer ties to Europe, closer ties to the EU, and now they are a step closer to having that. That being said, this is only the beginning of what can be a long and arduous process, and a process which there is no guarantee that they could even become a European Union member.
Yeah, I mean, give us a reality check here. There is a long list of candidate countries. Making it onto the list doesn't necessarily mean fast membership, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't, and the EU has certain criteria having to do with finances, with rule of law, with governance, and there also are political considerations. Each EU member state has a veto, can veto any new members, and sometimes they don't have to necessarily justify why they are doing that, and we've seen that with the case of the Western Balkans, where a couple of those countries, North Macedonia and Albania, are having their candidacies right now blocked by the current government of Bulgaria. And let's listen to what the Albanian Prime Minister had to say coming into a Western Balkans Leaders Summit this morning.
Macedonia is candidate since 17 years, if I have not lost the count. Albania since 8. So welcome to Ukraine. It's a good thing to give candidate status, but I hope the Ukrainian people will not make many illusions about it.
So the question now is, how long will it take for Ukraine to potentially travel this road? We've heard strong signals of support from the EU, but the reality, as we've learned through this EU accession process, can be very different as this road goes on.
Ira, thanks for that. Our correspondent Ira Spitzer in Brussels.
Airstrikes are continuing in the Ukrainian city of Severodonetsk. President Zelensky has repeated calls for allies to send more heavy weapons, claiming that Russia plans to take control of the entire eastern Donbass step by step. Separately, footage has emerged showing the aftermath of a drone strike on an oil refinery in Russia's Rostov-on-Don. Well, let's talk now to Associated Press correspondent Kieran McQuillan, who's in Lviv. So, Kieran, President Zelensky has described conditions in the eastern Donbass as the second Mariupol. What's the latest you're hearing on the situation there?
Well, that's interesting, that comparison with Mariupol, because just yesterday, the regional governor of the Luhansk region, the Ukrainian regional governor, that is, Serhiy Haidai, he said that the Azot chemical plant, which is now the ever-decreasing area of land in the twin cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. In Severodonetsk itself, this Azot chemical plant was being defended by Ukrainians in underground passages and underground tunnels which had been constructed there during the Cold War. Very reminiscent of the situation in Mariupol. Those fighters are holding on to the death in that particular chemical plant in the city. He said it was very difficult for...
Oh, we have unfortunately lost our connection to Kieran McQuillan in Lviv. Hopefully we will be able to get back to him later on in the programme. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, Germany warns of winter gas rationing as Russia cuts energy exports to Europe.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans, grey rhinos, and unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. And a quick reminder that CGTN is available to watch for free on all the major digital platforms, on Smart TV or online on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube, Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app, and in the UK on Freeview.
Germany has warned that it may need to ration gas supplies over this winter. The government has triggered phase 2 of the country's emergency gas plan, with new forecasts showing gas is increasingly in short supply in Europe's biggest economy. Our correspondent Trent Murray reports.
Well, this decision by Vice-Chancellor Habeck shows concerns are growing here in Berlin that the country could soon face some serious gas shortfalls. The move comes after Russian energy giant Gazprom last week made a big cut to gas supplies, namely to Nord Stream 1, which is one of the main pipelines that feeds Germany directly from Russia. Gazprom is blaming maintenance work that requires parts from abroad which are being blocked by sanctions, but the German government is not buying that argument. Habeck says the cut is deliberate, even described it as a, quote, economic attack, warning people they need to be prepared.
We are now called on to reduce gas consumption already during the summer and looking ahead towards winter. It is surely a deceiving reality we are currently in. Summer is here, a summer after a long period of the pandemic, and people want to enjoy time outside and maybe without political misery for once. But winter will arrive.
Given the potential for shortfalls, today's announcement means greater priority will be placed on limiting gas use now to save it for the winter. Credit lines will be offered to utility companies to buy more gas for storage, while more coal power plants will be fired up. Theoretically, it could also allow companies to pass additional costs onto households as a means to limit use. But so far, the government has stopped short of allowing that to happen. For now, the government insists that energy security is assured, but the Vice-Chancellor has also said that Germany has, quote, a rocky road ahead over the next few months. He also hasn't been able to completely rule out the possibility of gas rationing in the months ahead, all as Europe's biggest economy works desperately to try and find alternative sources of energy to prevent shortages in the winter. Trent Murray, CGTN, Berlin.
British Airways staff at London's Heathrow Airport have voted to strike over pay. 700 workers, mostly check-in staff, will walk out during the school summer holidays, a peak time when demand is expected to be at pre-pandemic levels. Heathrow Airport is one of Europe's busiest hubs. The GMB union says the row is over a 10% pay cut that was introduced during the pandemic but has not been reinstated.
Meanwhile, pilots and crew at Brussels Airlines have begun a 3-day walkout over what they say are heavy workloads, poor working conditions and low pay. The carrier has cancelled over 300 flights due to the strikes, which will continue until Saturday. At least 40,000 passengers are expected to be affected.
Toyota has recalled its fleet of electric vehicles less than 2 months after launching the range designed to take on Tesla. It's due to safety concerns about the bolts that connect the wheels to the car. 2,700 battery-operated SUVs have been recalled, with 2,200 of those destined for Europe. Toyota says it's still investigating the defects and urged owners not to drive the vehicles until it can be fixed.
An inquiry into allegations of sexual harassment in Australia's mining industry has found that intimidation of female staff was commonplace. The hearing at Australia's Western Parliament in Perth has concluded that abuse was systemic at camps run by some of the country's biggest mining firms, with female employees often subjected to rape, sexual assault and physical violence. Mining groups BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto have pledged to make changes.
US Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has begun a second day of testimony on Capitol Hill after vowing to keep raising interest rates until inflation is under control. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Will Denslow on Wall Street. Will, investors will be watching this very closely again. What is Powell saying and how are the markets reacting?
Well, Jamie, every time the Federal Reserve, or more specifically the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell speaks, investors on Wall Street listen and listen very closely indeed. Now, this is the second day that Jerome Powell is addressing questions from lawmakers in the nation's capital. There was perhaps some eyebrows raised on Wednesday when Jerome Powell failed to mention one particular word. He said that he didn't express an unconditional support for curbing inflation that's up at 40-year highs. That fueled plenty of speculation on Wall Street that led many to think that perhaps the chair of the Federal Reserve was more dovish than previously expected when it comes to getting price pressures under control. However, speaking to the House Finance Services Committee on Thursday, Jerome Powell did say that he expressed an unconditional commitment to fighting inflation, therefore raising speculation that the Fed could be potentially prepared to see things like unemployment rise in the United States, to even see the US fall into recession, all in a bid to get inflation under control. So that certainly has been the takeaway, a message from many investors on Wall Street digesting this second day of testimony from the Fed chair. Of course, on Wednesday, he also said that the Fed had the tools and the resolve it takes to get price pressures, that inflation, back under control.
Now, today is a big day for gun company shares. Fill us in. What's going on?
Absolutely, of course, with such a landmark decision from the Supreme Court in the United States, really seen as the biggest expansion of gun rights in over a decade or so in the US. Of course, all eyes for investors will be on how that's impacting gun manufacturers. Of course, in the wake of several horrific mass shootings in the United States, there's been so much noise when it comes to what lawmakers can do to put in more restrictive rights on guns. Of course, at the moment, there are efforts underway in the nation's capital to pass more gun control legislation. Of course, that you'd expect would have a negative impact on share prices for gun manufacturers. Now, looking immediately at how some of the big gun makers in the US are responding to this news coming out of the Supreme Court that really essentially knocks down a New York law that sought to provide people that wanted to have sealed carry permits to have a reasoning for that. What we've seen from some of these gun makers, Smith & Wesson, their shares at last check over 7%. Ruger up around 2% as well at last check. So certainly we're seeing a bump for some of these gun manufacturers off the back of that announcement from the Supreme Court.
Now, Tesla's boss, Elon Musk, making the news headlines again. This time, a rather interesting quote suggesting that his new electric car factories are losing an absolute fortune, in fact, losing billions.
It's absolutely right. This year, a few extracts coming from an interview with the Tesla CEO, Elon Musk, and he pointed to two relatively new factories that are in Germany as well as in Texas. He said they're losing billions of dollars right now. He said, and I'm quoting him now, both Berlin and Austin factories are gigantic money furnaces right now. He expressed some reasons why that is indeed the case. He very much cited supply chain issues, stating that they can't ramp up enough production at some of these factories. He also said that as well as the lingering supply chain issues, he said that one particular component needed for batteries, he said that some of those components are simply stuck at ports in China and can't get to Europe or the United States. So certainly a huge amount of frustration there from Elon Musk. And of course, these comments just come really off the back of the Tesla CEO announcing he's making a large fraction of job cuts. He said that Tesla seeks to cut around 10% of salaried workforces. So clearly more signs of the huge impact that supply chain issues are having for the electric vehicle maker.
Will, thanks for that. Our correspondent Will Denslow on Wall Street.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, Russia continues its advance across eastern Ukraine, but a drone strike takes out a key oil refinery within its own borders.
What I show of China is what I really experienced in China, and it's very different to what people in the West experience in China.
70 years ago, a small group of British businessmen travelled to China to unlock opportunities between the two countries. They became known as the icebreakers.
I think it's fantastically important to educate British people about Chinese history and culture.
We have sown seeds which in China have grown to very big trees.
The values of horsemanship, respect, responsibility, compassion can be extended to all relationships.
My name is Max. I'm a food blogger. I grew up in China. Now I live in the UK.
We deserve respect, and the Chinese people with their own culture also deserve respect.
For cross-cultural understanding, I think food is a really good place to start. I hope to spread awareness of all the different cultures within China. I think there's a lot to share.
To increase understanding between cultures, I think time and patience is of course important, but the most important thing is responsibility.
Meet the bridge builders, the individuals who dare to think beyond the horizon and open up our world.
Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe with Jamie Owen and Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. China's president calls for BRICS countries to oppose international sanctions and abandon Cold War mentality as the Five Nations Summit begins.
European lawmakers have voted to formally accept Ukraine and Moldova as candidates to join the European Union, but there are many hurdles ahead.
In Ukraine, Russian troops are continuing to advance towards the eastern city of Severodonetsk.
The governor of the Luhansk region has said that Ukrainian forces may soon have to withdraw from neighbouring Lysychansk amid signs that the city has been encircled by Moscow-backed troops. It's also been reported that 3 cruise missiles have hit the port city of Mykolaiv. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent Stuart Smith, who's in Moscow, and a reminder that correspondents in Russia are working under new media laws that restrict what they can report. So, Stuart, how is this latest phase of the conflict being reported in Russia?
Well, we've had an update in the past hour with one military official speaking to Russian media about what they say are quick successes, colossal in their words, the pace of Russian forces in that northwestern area of Luhansk, moving towards that last bit of territory remaining of the so-called Luhansk People's Republic to try and take that over. It comes after the past 24-hour update provided by the Ministry of Defense characterized the success of Russian forces as Ukraine suffering considerable losses. This is the message that Russia has been presenting throughout its so-called special military operation. They're saying the latest figures over the past day were that 650 Ukrainian so-called nationalists have been killed in action. They pointed to a particular problem with one battalion where they they say that there has been significant numbers of deaths inflicted by the Russian military. They say 150 people out of around 1,000 have been killed, 450 wounded, and that, they say, is going to help them in their fight to move the operation forward, with the strategic aim remaining, as reported here in Russia, of denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine. But there was a warning this afternoon from the Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. He was speaking to his Belarusian counterpart here in Moscow, about the need for better joint air defenses around what's called the Union State. This is the Belarus and Russian initiative to become ever closer in union, and he says that the borders do need reinforcing, both with more troops and with air defences. It comes at the same time that Belarus at the OSCE on Thursday reported that it had counted around 17 Ukrainian drone incursions into its sovereign territory of around an average of 3 kilometres. Ukraine hasn't commented on that so far.
And Stuart, it seems that targets within Russian territory are being hit, notably a drone strike on an oil refinery in Rostov-on-Don.
That's right. It's not the first time that Russia has claimed Ukrainian forces have moved their operations into what is undoubtedly Russian territory. This is around 10 to 15 kilometers inside Russia's border in the Rostov region, where two Ukrainian drones, as the region's governor suggests they may be, hit a oil refinery. And this happened on Wednesday, but the investigation is continuing with the plant shut down while investigators work out what exactly happened. But it does seem at least one of those drones caused a major fire, although the Ministry of Emergency Situations say that nobody was injured or killed when that happened. So far, Russia has been responding to various incursions it claims have taken place with helicopters, drones and shelling, with higher state of emergency in some of these regions. But the government this week also announced a plan over the next year to significantly upgrade defences around the Russian border, where it does border Ukraine, or as Russia would call it, the Luhansk People's Republic and Donetsk People's Republic. It's something that the authorities in Kiev have denied. They haven't commented on any sort of cross-border activities, but this is something Russia has been reporting every month since its so-called special military operation began.
Stuart Smith in Moscow, many thanks.
So just how significant are these latest reported advances by Russian troops, and could a withdrawal by Ukrainian forces from parts of the Luhansk region signal something of a turning point in this conflict? Let's talk to Liam Collins, former US Special Forces colonel and a former advisor to Ukraine's military. Liam, welcome back to the programme. These will be very worrying developments for Brussels and Washington and London. You recently returned from Ukraine. What is your assessment of the situation there now?
Yeah, I mean, as everybody sees, right, the bulk of the fighting now has moved to the east, where it's really a war of attrition out there, where Russia is massing its combat power. And that's really the only advantage Russia has, right? It's got a larger military, many more systems. And so kind of this attritional warfare, they're going to have more success. What we saw earlier on, right, when it's maneuver warfare, right, that favors the Ukrainians, who are much better trained, much more competent in terms of their leadership. And so it's not surprising to see Russia have some limited gains out there, right, as they mass this combat power. Ukraine has a smaller military, and so it can't take heavy losses. It will pull back rather than suffer heavy losses, so that's not a big surprise.
So are we seeing a turning of the page here? Do you sense a change in this conflict over the last few days or last few weeks?
Not really, right? If you really look over the last month, the focus has been on Severodonetsk, where Russia has made incremental gains. But keep in mind, that's taken everything they've had. They've thrown it at that to make these very slow advances. And during that time, getting less coverage, right, Ukraine has recaptured more territory in the Kharkiv and Kherson Oblast than Russia has gained in the Luhansk Oblast. So when you look at it, the larger scale of war, right, Russia has gained less territory than it's lost to the Ukrainians. And so you got to put it all into perspective.
For those of us from not a military background, I guess I'm trying to get to, is Russia winning the war?
No, I would definitely say Russia's not winning the war, right? They're having some tactical successes at great cost, right? They're suffering significant losses. You just reported on the Ukrainian losses, but Russia's suffering significant losses, exhausting some of their weapon systems and ammunition. And so you got to look at it, right? They're having a tactical success there, but that doesn't mean it'll lead to operational or strategic success. As I mentioned, when they've lost territory in the Kherson Oblast and Kharkiv Oblast, and when I just was in and out of Ukraine last week, there are more Ukrainians entering back into the country than leaving. So that's a sign that the Ukrainian citizens don't see this as a Russian win.
British intelligence is reporting that Russia's momentum will slow over the next few months because of what it describes as the exhaustion of its resources. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I would say I tend to agree with that assessment. It's really hard to get a good understanding of how much Russia is exhausting in this fight, but without a doubt, it's significant, right? In terms of the ammunition, it seems like they've exhausted most of their precision-guided munitions that they didn't have many of early in the war, right? Their combat systems, right? We see the troops suffering significant losses of the troops based on who they're calling out to kind of mobilize for the fight to continue. And so it seems like this, right, as they get gains in Luhansk, if they're able to take all of Luhansk, they will probably hold there because they will be exhausted.
And there seems to be no sign of an early end to this conflict, does there?
No, without a doubt. I mean, this war is going to last, at least months, most likely years. I mean, keep in mind the simmering conflict in the Donbass started in 2014, and it continued on until this war started. So there's no reason to believe that this will end anytime soon.
Colonel Liam Collins, former US Special Forces Colonel and former advisor to Ukraine's military, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he hopes his visit to Rwanda will help dispel what he calls people's condescending attitudes to the East African country. It follows criticism of the UK government's plans to deport asylum seekers to Africa. Prince Charles is also in Kigali and is reportedly among those critics. Well, our correspondent Andrew Wilson is watching events for us. So, Andrew, this is a meeting that's been delayed for 2 years because of COVID. Nobody knew then that Rwanda would have the controversial role that it has today.
No, it's proving diplomatically rather awkward, both for the royal family and for the Prime Minister, in terms of how to approach this meeting. The Prime Minister would like to be welcoming the Commonwealth leaders back together again after a 4-year separation, welcoming also Rwanda, which is a relatively new member, and talking about the future between the UK and the Rwanda in terms of one of Africa's fastest growing countries and increases in trade and so on. Instead, of course, all the questions are about these failed migrant flights the UK has been trying to organise to Rwanda, which is a separate issue from the Commonwealth meeting, but nonetheless one that seems to have followed the Prime Minister all the way out there, with questions constantly thrown at him about whether or not he'll be discussing this with Prince Charles and whether or not he'll be trying to persuade Prince Charles it's a good policy, all because Prince Charles is on record of saying he thought this idea was appalling. However, the Palace have stressed that the Prince Charles is there in a non-political capacity, and that's how he operates, and Number 10 have also stressed now that the Prime Minister will not be broaching this issue with all the other issues that are going on around. I think there is some irritation on the royal side because Prince Charles would rather have a discussion in the media about the issues closer to his heart, like youth unemployment and employment in Africa, education, and other issues to do with his Prince's Trust and other charities. That, of course, has been sidelined by this row over the migrant plan.
And, Andrew, this is a Commonwealth summit without the Queen, who is the head of the Commonwealth. Does the Commonwealth matter anymore?
Many people are trying to describe the Commonwealth now as a busted flush, as a rapidly disintegrating organisation, one that has the clock ticking on it as far as for as long as Queen Elizabeth is on the throne. Now, there is a succession plan in place for when the Queen steps back, which is that Prince Charles will take over as a ceremonial head. Up till now, Commonwealth countries, by and large, have not expressed very strong opinions about this. There are some strong opinions, particularly in Barbados, which turned itself into a non-Commonwealth realm last year, and also there's an indifference on the part of countries like South Africa and India, to whom the Commonwealth is not so important, but there will be questions about whether or not this is the moment for a bit of modernisation. I think the chief question is, who does it as well as the Queen does? Because she really is the reason why the cameras come to these events, and Prince Charles also is the reason why the cameras come to these events. Now, not many national leaders on a rotational role, for example, as ceremonial leader, could produce that kind of publicity. So there will be a hard look about what the Commonwealth actually represents. Remember, it's not a trading bloc, it's just a group of affiliated countries. Whether or not it's relevant or not, but I think there's a huge appreciation that this coincidental factor of the royal family at its heart does seem to work to its benefit.
Andrew, thanks very much. Our correspondent, Andrew Wilson.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. How much is that doggy in the window? The multi-billion-dollar business of pampered pets. Next.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
Unprecedented scenes that we saw.
The clean-up operation is now well and truly underway.
Parts of southern Europe remain in a state of emergency.
Context gives meaning. People make history.
Far more than 1,000 people have come here today.
But authorities are still on high alert.
So now we've actually become the border on this road.
A complex world demands a comprehensive view.
But with the cleanup efforts more or less under control,
the economic impact is bound to ripple across the country.
There's plastic pollution everywhere.
Because the world today matters for your world tomorrow.
This is the living area of the crew.
The focus is firmly on future technologies.
Well, this is something completely different.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
The agreement is signed. But what is the real deal now the UK has left the EU? For trade, for business, for the city, for ordinary people. Make sense of Brexit with CGTN.
This week on Razor, how red light can be used to recharge the retinal cells in our eyes, and how gender bias affects the treatment and study of cardiovascular disease in women.
In trials, treatments, in data collection, men were just as good, and you don't need to know anything more about the impact on women's health. We know that now to be false.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. Authorities in the UK are working to find the source of the polio virus that's been discovered in a sewage works in London.
This all comes after a national incident was declared. Our correspondent, Nuid Jabarkil, has been following the story for us. What's the latest on the search for the source?
Well, still going on. These traces of the virus were found at a routine inspection of sewage in East London, a place called the Beckton Sewage Plant. Now, it's not uncommon to find a few traces of this each year, probably a handful. What's different here is that since February, month after month, more of the traces have been found, and they indicate that it may be from one particular household. And the reason the government and health officials are calling this a national incident, even though the threat to the public remains extremely low, they say, is because of possible community transmission. Now, this sewage plant is in an area where up to 4 million people live in North and East London, and one junior minister in the health secretary earlier today said that they could actually, with the technology that they have, pinpoint which street this came from and even which house, believe it or not. So those things are ongoing. But in terms of where it's come from and the source, what the current theory is among officials in the Health Security Agency is that someone must have gone to one of the countries where the wild polio virus is still active. That's 3 countries in the world, Afghanistan, Pakistan or Nigeria, and had a live vaccine rather than the inactive vaccine that's offered in the West. They've come back, and traces of the active virus may have been passed through their gut in faeces and possibly to those around them, and that's why there's danger to the public now. So still looking, but the government says they're pretty sure that they can pinpoint where it's come from.
So, Nuid, people in the UK will be asking just how worried they should be.
Yeah, the people who should be most worried, officials say, are those who aren't vaccinated fully against polio. If we take a look at the figures which we've been crashing today, 1984 was the last time, almost 40 years ago, that the last case was detected in the UK. And in terms of vaccinations, there are three stages you have to do it in. First, for infants and babies around 1 year old, then before you're 5, a second booster shot's given, a second round, and then at the age of 14 as well. Now, the World Health Organization says 95% of children under the age of 5 should be offered this, which is why most of the world has pretty much eradicated polio, except for those few countries. But if you look at the UK's figures for 2020, the last figures we had available, that first jab for infants, 93% across the UK. But the second one, the booster, that falls to 86%. And even closer inspection shows quite a few differences across countries. Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, 92%. In England, that number falls to 85%, dragging the average down. And in major urban areas, the problem's even worse, 3/4. Why? One possibility is COVID-19, because schools were closed. These educational settings were where people often got the jabs, particularly children. And the other is perhaps vaccine hesitancy, again linked to COVID-19. The World Health Organization saying misinformation, disinformation has made people hesitant, and that could be another factor driving this.
Richard Barker, thank you very much.
Car makers have made great progress in recent years in trying to remove toxic chemicals from exhaust fumes, but one form of pollution has been quietly increasing as our cars get bigger, heavier and stronger and faster: rubber particles from the tyres. Our correspondent Jim Jury reports.
Vehicles are a major source of air pollution. Leaving aside greenhouse gases, modern filters have practically eliminated harmful particles from exhaust emissions. But scientists are increasingly worried about rubber tyres, which derive from crude oil and contain toxic chemicals. They wear out faster when we brake, accelerate or turn corners. Each tyre can produce almost 2,000 times more particle pollution than exhaust pipes.
Some of this dust generated or pollution generated from the tires is so fine that it can enter actually our lungs. It's tar because, you know, the tire is made from byproducts of oil and coal. So it's definitely not a good thing. It's not meant to be part of our body.
The heavier the vehicle, the more tyre particles are released. So trucks, vans, SUVs and even big electric cars with their heavy batteries are the worst offenders. There are few rules on tyre particulates and no major studies on their impact, though the EU is considering imposing limits for non-exhaust emissions in new regulations due in 2025.
On the air quality monitoring, you need to add tyre pollution, because monitoring just tells you what's in the air. It doesn't differentiate what are they. Are they tire pollution? Are they dust from construction? Are they dust from Sahara?
While regulators delay, London-based start-up Tyre Collective has a solution.
We're developing a device that will sit on the vehicle itself behind the tyre, and it uses electrostatics to capture these particles at source. So the plates you see on the inside are charged, and that's where they deflect and attract the particles, and then reuse these particles back into new applications such as new tyres and other rubber products to create a closed-loop system.
In road tests, the device collected 60% of tyre particles. Tyre Collective wants to market it to freight operators.
The driver or the operator would have to empty this as infrequently as possible, so it would fit in line with their monthly maintenance schedules. The device itself is fitted with an automated cleaning mechanism, so the plates are routinely wiped down and the particles captured are stored in a removable cartridge.
The company is in the early stages of seed funding and says its device could hit the road by 2024. Jim Drury, CGTN, London.
The World Health Organization is meeting to decide whether to declare the recent monkeypox outbreak a global health emergency, its highest level of concern. The move has been criticised by some health leaders in Africa who say the disease has been a crisis on the continent for years. Outside Africa, there are currently around 3,000 cases across 40 countries.
France's president says the country faces deep division after losing his parliamentary majority in the election. Emmanuel Macron now needs to deal with opposition groups, including a coalition of socialists and Greens. The right-wing national rally led by Marine Le Pen also increased its share of the vote in a result that's been described as a democratic shock by some in Macron's own party.
8 medical staff, including 3 doctors, are to stand trial for the death of football legend Diego Maradona. The 60-year-old had been recovering from brain surgery when he died in 2020 from a heart attack. An investigation found that his medical team acted in an inappropriate, deficient and reckless manner. They all deny responsibility for his death.
The US synchronized swimmer has been saved by her coach after fainting in the pool at the World Championships. Anita Alvarez had just completed her event when she fell unconscious and sank to the bottom. But her coach dived in and pulled her to the surface. She's said to be doing well and is hoping to compete in Friday's team events.
For decades, black Americans have faced discrimination based on the natural texture of their hair and the way they style it. A national study found that girls as young as 5 years old have faced hair discrimination that can last a lifetime. Our correspondent Tony Waterman reports.
A pop-up, immersive and Instagrammable art exhibit. The Black Hair Experience celebrates the unique beauty of black hair and is a nostalgic throwback to the culture that surrounds it.
So this is an actual straighten comb, like the style of one that we use, and that's a crimper.
Exhibit co-founder Elizabeth Davis says the message she's trying to send is simple, that black hair is beautiful no matter how people choose to wear it.
I feel like hair culture for us is an extension of yourself. I really love to change my hair based off of my mood and based off of what I wear. It's a way of creativity. Unfortunately, we are still in times where people will see that the way that my hair currently is and the way that it grows out of my hair as something that is less than.
In recent months, there have been at least 3 high-profile cases of Texas teens being punished for their traditional African hairstyles, which have broken their school's dress code policies. Things aren't much better in the workplace, where, according to a recent study by Dove Research, 80% of black women nationally felt they had to change their natural hair to meet social norms or expectations at work. Autumn Cavanis did her PhD dissertation on hair discrimination, which she describes as a vestige of slavery and European standards of what is considered beautiful.
But even though you may have the advanced degree, your hair still plays a part in how others in that workplace view you and essentially view the work that you've already done to get in that place. When you are worried and concerned about, can I take this job? Can I do this in humid weather? What if my hair doesn't hold up under weather conditions? You can never do your best work under that kind of pressure.
Right now, there's a bill making its way through Congress trying to change that. Known as the Crown Act, it bans discrimination based on someone's hair texture and style, including locks, cornrows, twists, braids, and afros.
Madam Speaker.
In March, it passed the House mostly along party lines, Republicans calling it unnecessary and a distraction from bigger issues facing the country.
We have rights, the civil rights law cover this thing, cover this kind of, any kind of discrimination here. It's covered. It's wrong if it happens. But this is what the Democrats are focused on. 14 months of chaos, and we're doing a bill on hair.
The Crown Act is still waiting to be taken up in the Senate, where its fate is uncertain. But if it does pass, U.S. President Joe Biden has signaled that he'd sign it into law. In the meantime, at least 14 individual states have enacted their own version of the Crown Act. Elizabeth Davis is hoping her pop-up art exhibit will help foster conversation around the issue and reach a whole new generation of black men and women.
We relied a lot on magazines, a lot on, the TV shows, but with them, they're relying a lot on social media and the influencers. And I hope that the people they are following are showing and teaching them that they can love themselves the way they are.
Meeting them on their own turf is perhaps the best way to get that message across. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Austin, Texas.
Pampered pets are big business. The global animal care industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and some of the biggest spenders are in Spain. Our correspondent Rahul Pathak has been to visit the world's biggest dog show in Madrid.
Over 16,500 dogs of all shapes and sizes have descended on Madrid as the city hosts the largest global event for all things canine. The World Dog Show at the IFEMA Centre will see more than 250 different breeds compete in a variety of events designed to test everything from obedience to agility.
Well, as well as the competition, this event also includes a huge trade fair for Spain's rapidly growing pet care sector. Now, Spaniards love to spend money and care and attention on their pets and their dogs especially. So much so that the industry has expanded to such an extent that it's now worth an estimated $42 billion a year.
Laboclin is one such company that works in the field of genetic testing. They specialise in DNA profiling, hereditary diseases and even coat colour. The service is often used by owners of pedigree pets who want to assess the health of their animal.
We started out in Bad Kissingen, where with just a couple of veterinarians working, and over 25 years it has been a story of success, growing up to over 500 employees by now.
The relationship between Spaniards and their pets became even closer during the pandemic. Walking your dog was one of the few outdoor activities permitted during the lockdown. Also, pets offered much-needed comfort and companionship to many people who found themselves isolated during the COVID-19 outbreak.
Having a dog during the pandemic and strict lockdowns was very important. They helped us to overcome those difficult moments when we were isolated at home. Dogs have been great companions for keeping us busy at home.
Absoluto, te digo, o sea, yo...
Dogs are fundamental. I'm going through a lot right now, dealing with depression. And if it wasn't for my dog, I could have been in hospital by now. He has really cheered me up.
Currently, there are 9.3 million dogs registered in Spain. That means there are more homes in this country with pets than with children. It's safe to say Spain's love affair with man's best friend is thriving. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
The headlines again. China's president calls for BRICS countries to oppose international sanctions and abandon Cold War mentality as the Five Nations Summit begins.
Our other headlines: European lawmakers have voted to formally accept Ukraine and Moldova as candidates to join the European Union, but there are many hurdles still ahead.
And Elon Musk says Tesla's new electric car factories in the United States and Germany are losing billions of dollars.
That's it for Global Business Europe. Thank you for watching.
More on all our stories at europe.cgtn.com, and do follow CGTN Europe on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.
We're on smart TV apps: Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube, Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app, and in the UK on Preview.
Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all of the team in London, goodbye.
Goodbye.